Welcome to the Subway Conversation Chat. My name is Jamie Malloy, and I'm ready to talk some New York baseball with you all and my co-host, Joe Dalio. So without any further delay, here's Joe. Hey, Joe, how's it going?
It is going very well. How you doing?
I'm good. As we mentioned backstage, the Yankees avoided a sweep of the Blue Jays with a 5-inning comeback. You underbetted Juan Soto, which we talked about, and I talked about his awesome eye for looking at pitches and stuff. And your Mets are doing great, and they already passed the Braves test. And now we got to see if they can pass the Dodgers test in LA this week. I wonder if are you and Jason going to do like a friendly wager or something?
You friendly? No, I haven't talked to him about that. I forgot he's a Dodgers fan. But no, in fact, our channel producer here is a big Pirates fan. So we were going to maybe try to get something going on here. We couldn't, but it was nice that the Mets were able to sweep the Pirates, and we'll talk a lot about that and everything. But just definitely, we've been doing the show a few weeks, and this is going to be my favorite week because it's always nice to talk about the team that I'm covering here and that I've been a fan of. When they're doing well. First couple of weeks we were talking about how bad they were doing. Now there's a lot of optimism in Mets land here. So, I certainly look forward to talking about that. And I'm going to turn it over to you to start, though, with your Yankees. Anything newsworthy happening this week? Or there's always stuff newsworthy happening, but what are some of the highlights there for the Yankees?
Well, you definitely got that right, Joe. There's always news, especially when it's New York City and involving two historic baseball teams there with the Yankees and the Mets. So anyway, with the Yankees, we're going to talk about the injury updates right now. The Yankees have added John Birdie, their utility player that they got in a trade for Ben Rovat, bless you.
Thank you.
To the injury list on April 13th with a left adductor injury. The Yankees obtained Birdie on March 27th, as I mentioned, from the Marlins, and he suffered his injury running to first base April 10th on his former team. He was batting .211 with 1 RBI and 19 at-bats. And manager Aaron Boone said he didn't think Birdie's injury was too serious. That's always a good thing.
Yes.
The manager says that. And in Birdie's absence, Oswaldo Cabrera will get the starting role at third base, and he's basically a utility player too. And they like him. And now the Bronx Bombers also called up infielder Kevin Smith from AAA Scranton Wilkes-Barre to up their utility position. Moving on to DJ LeMahieu. There's good news out of the LeMahieu camp, as he has traveled with the team to Toronto for their series. And manager Aaron Boone said that it is very possible that LeMahieu will go get a rehab. We'll go try a rehab assignment when the team gets back to New York on April 18th. Sorry, folks, had a little bit of slip of the tongue there, but I got it. We move on to Jonathan Loáisiga. Little more bittersweet news here. Loáisiga on April 6th said that he had a torn UCL and needs to have season-ending surgery. We went on to say that Dr. Keith Muster would perform his procedure, that he is an estimated 10 to 12 months of recovery. So, yeah, Jonathan Loáisiga, we here at Driving to the Top Productions wish you a healthy and speedy recovery. So the Yankees also stirred things up by recently calling up Rod Marinaccio and Josh Massajuski. This marks Marinaccio's third straight season joining the Yankees, as he tallied a 3.05 ERA in 91 and a third innings and pitched over the last 2 years. And for Massajuski, in his only showing for the Bombers so far, has come in relief and has pitched a scoreless inning. So that should be an additional help to their quality bullpen, and hopefully you will get to see more from him soon. And finally, our ace, Garrett Cole, or as I call him, Old King Cole, but he isn't Old King Cole, and he's not a merry old soul. He's still a merry young soul at heart. But, yesterday, Cole upped His throwing to 75 feet, increasing it from just 60 feet on April 8th. He has been making a moderate but firm development towards his return. Uh, and so we say, young Garrett Cole is a merry young soul, and a merry young soul is he on the Yankees.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyway, now I'm going to turn it over to Joe to get update on some Mets news, but I'll be back later with more news. Sorry, with more news. Joe?
All right. Not too much going on as far as changes and transactions with the Mets here. I like to make a little soap opera out of their middle relief. Now, the middle relief with the Mets has been excellent this year, but it seems like there's been a revolving door with some of them. The one, Johan Ramirez, our friend that, again, with the botched throw at Rhys Hoskins and a little bit of ineffectivity, and the Mets got rid of him. And they had designated him for assignment last week, and they actually traded him away to the Baltimore Orioles. So our gain, yeah, I'm trying to think of it. It's their loss, I guess, if we can put it that way. No offense to Johan, but again, with the way the Mets middle relievers have been pitching, certainly not a need for him there. Now, as far as starting pitchers are concerned, we were talking about Julio Teheran last week, and he had that one outing against the Braves and kind of felt bad. I said, he hadn't pitched in a while, and then you throw him to the Wolves, to the best offense in baseball, or one of them anyway. And he struggled a little bit, and the Mets had designated him for assignment, but he was actually sent to Syracuse. So he is still with the team and pitching in the minor leagues. Now, one of my favorite pitchers on this team is slowly becoming a guy named Jose Butto. He was started in the minors, and he came up and he pitched in a doubleheader against the Tigers, and he pitched 6 innings. He did excellent. Gave up a run or two, or I don't even know. I remember I gave the stats last week, but he pitched 6 innings, which a lot of the starters hadn't been doing. And they sent him back down to the minors. And I couldn't really understand why, especially because of the lack of depth and some injuries on the starting pitching staff. So they brought him up this week again, and he pitched 6 excellent innings as well. He pitched, he didn't get the win, but they won that game that he pitched. And again, 6 excellent innings by Butto. And he's going to be pitching again in one of the games in Los Angeles too. So that'll be a real test for him, pitching on the road at Dodger Stadium with that offense. So, we'll see if he can continue to do as well as he's been doing these starts. And hopefully he could stay with the team, at least for now, that some of their, previous starting pitchers here are on the disabled list. So, that's it. They picked up a catcher named Joe Hudson. Hadn't heard of him, and I guess they could use a little bit of depth there, although Alvarez is playing most of the time, obviously, at catcher. But another little bit of interesting information that just happened earlier today. In fact, I was watching the Mets game, and they said this on there, and I confirmed it. Another one of their middle relievers that was fighting for a position, Michael Tompkin, who struggled in a couple of games. He lost a couple of extra inning games during their losing streak. And, they let him go, and he was actually traded to Minnesota for cash. They let him go, and he was on waivers, and the Mets picked him up today on waivers. So we'll see what happens with that. It's depth, I guess, but really, when I go over some of the statistical things here, I mean, the Mets bullpen has just been amazing, and the guys that have been there are doing excellent here. So the only other news as far as injuries is concerned, again, is Kodai Senga making some progress. I heard today he's still probably not going to be pitching with the team until probably early June. And then another middle reliever that had been doing well, Sean Reed Foley, is making progress. I think he's going to be making a rehab start soon, so he could be back with the team pretty soon. And they had a little bit of a scare with Brett Beatty, the young player who had been playing well. He tweaked his hamstring a little bit, but they were saying they think they caught it in time. They took him out, and he didn't do too much damage. So he didn't play in today's game, and he may miss another game or two, but probably will avoid the IL. So that would be good news because he's had momentum, positive momentum, and you don't want an injury to get in the way of that and have him kind of have to start all over again. He's been playing well. He's fitting in with this team. It seems like every time somebody gets a hit, there he is celebrating with them. So, being a great teammate and everything, and hopefully he could stay healthy and get back in the lineup very soon. So, luckily, knock on wood. I mean, the Mets have been very lucky with injuries so far, and hopefully that can continue. So that's a little update with the news here. So if you got some Yankee statistics and information, anything you want to share too. I was going to ask you as well about an event that didn't happen on the field, but happened in the broadcast booth with a certain broadcaster announcing his retirement. What was your reaction to that?
I think it's a good thing for him, but I also think it's a sad day in the New York Yankees baseball world to have a guy like John Sterling retire. I mean, some of his calls were just fantastic. Like you had every time Hideki Matsui, who we loved, hit a home run, he'd say a thriller from Godzilla. Or Bernie Williams for 15 years when he was on the team, he would say Bernie goes boom when he hit a home run, and then he would say burn, baby, burn is like a lyric from the song Disco Inferno by the Tramps.
Yep.
And then he did for Melky Cabrera, he would say the Milkman, and then A-Rod was an A-bomb from A-Rod. I mean, it just, the list goes on with him. So yeah, and I think but it's also a Stantonian moment that he's retiring. So
right.
Congratulations, champ John Sterling. You've been a champ and an advocate for the Yankees and a great announcer. I loved watching you. It's going to be tough this year on my summer pool days when I'm on the deck and I turn on the radio and I listen to the WFAN New York Yankees Radio Network, and you're not announcing. So congratulations once again, Stern. Your voice was amazing, and you're gonna be missed in the booth. But thank you for all you do and all you're going to continue to do while you're still here on this earth. And then hopefully you're going to be here when the Yankees win another World Series, and I pray that that's this year too. So anyway, Joe, you mentioned the Mets bullpen's doing well. Well, the Yankees bullpen's also doing well. In fact, why everybody's bullpen's doing well, and they have to, because the starting pitchers, as we talked about, can't go more than 5 innings. So
That's right.
Bullpen has to basically do the job now. But anyway, before I pontificate a little more, let's talk about a moment with Giancarlo Stanton. Stanton hit a milestone versus his former team, the Miami Marlins. Number 27 of the Yankees became player number 15 to hit a home run versus all 30 MLB teams. And nevertheless, the Yankees still lost the game 5-2. But still, though, this is where the Yankees are off to their second best start at 10-3 since 2003, and that team started out 11-2. And what did they have in common? Oh yeah, that's right. Aaron Boone was a player on that team, and the Yankees went to the World Series. So could it be deja vu where the Yankees get off to their second best start and Aaron Boone's the manager and they go to the World Series? Well, time will tell. But moving on, Stanton, number 27, or Giancarlo Stantonian, joins names such as Mookie Betts, Manny Machado, JD, now on the Mets, Martinez, and Andrew in the Clutchin' McCutcheon there. And also for the former Marlin is now putting off Stantonian like at bats, a number at bats, meaning a lot of number at bats, as John Sterling, who's now retired, would have called it a Stantonian number. Anyway, the guys look good, scary good in the box, and that was a reference to the late Rick Jeanneret, who also retired from the Sabres. R.I.P. RJ. But anyway, back to baseball. This young man, well, he's a older guy, but he's a young kid still at heart, as he's been putting in work all off season with dieting, losing weight, and changing his swings. And as I mentioned backstage, Joe, we want to talk about the 1998 Yankees versus this year's 2024 Yankees comparisons. Both teams uh, were complete with hitting, starting pitching, and a quality bullpen, which obviously in 1998, you had Mariano Rivera, a.k.a. Enter Sandman,
Mm-hmm.
or the Metallica Man. Anyway, also both teams were a tight knit group who cared about each other and cared about winning and
Mm-hmm.
playing the game the right way. The starting pitching's been great even without Garrett Cole, and the Yankees had a boatload of great starters to include David Wells and David Cone. Man,
Right.
anyway, both teams played a fast, get a lot of walks and home run combination style like they see now. The Yankees lead the league in walks this year. And the Yankees also have Anthony Volpe at shortstop, where in 98, the Yankees had a young guy by the name of Derek Jeter who ended up going to the Hall of Fame. And I'm not saying Anthony Volpe is Derek Jeter yet. However, he's making some gold glove Derek Jeter-like plays already at shortstop, and he's leading off like Derek Jeter too. So the Yankees have always played this way when they were really good and when they were great. So moving on, David Wells pitched a perfect game in 1998 in May for the Yankees. And then whereas 26 years later, Nestor Cortez pitched 8 scoreless innings versus the Marlins. And Wells paved the way for pitchers like Cortez to be a good southpaw pitcher like he was. And anyway, we move on to other important baseball news. Um, Ipe Mitsuhara, who was Shohei Ohtani's former interpreter now, accused of taking over $60 million from him. Last week, federal authorities reported that Mitsuhara, the former interpreter for LA Dodgers Shohei Ohtani, has been charged with bank fraud due to claims that he took more um, than that 16 million for illegal gambling issues from Ohtani. And the U.S. Attorney's Department mentioned that the bets do not appear to have been made on the sport of baseball. So they were made on other sports because, as you know, players can't bet on their own sport.
Mm-hmm.
And all the bets were made between 2021 and 2024 from an account Mitsuhara opened up in Ohtani's name. The former interpreter made an estimated 19,000 bets at that time.
Jeez.
And the federal authorities, I know, right? The federal authorities summed it up with that Ohtani was never involved in uh, Mitsuhara's alleged gambling mishaps and was a victim of a scam. Ohtani did reply publicly saying that he had no knowledge of Mitsuhara's gambling and he never bet on baseball or any other sports. I'm just glad they finally have gotten all that figured out and
Mm-hmm.
Ohtani can move on knowing he didn't do it and knowing all along he didn't do it, and he can move on and just play baseball and live scot free and rent free. So Joe, what did you think of this? Do you think it was kind of that Ohtani was kind of the sacrificial lamb for this? Because I don't think he ever really did anything to begin with, and every baseball purist and fans knew it wasn't him.
Yeah, I felt that way too. I was hoping so. And of course, the lingering doubt in the back of your mind, it's like, oh my goodness, what if he did do something and, and this and that. But, he knew all along he didn't. And now everybody knows, so I'm glad it was brought into the light and that he was, basically freed from that, I don't want to say accusation or, just it's a burden now lifted. I mean, unfortunately, the guy lost a good friend here now, and I'm sure that hurts, and that's going to hurt for a long time. But you're right, he can now move on and think about baseball, than these other things.
Mm-hmm.
But you were talking about a couple of things that you had mentioned there. I don't know if you're done with your Yankee stats. I don't want to get in your way here. But John Sterling, I'll certainly miss. I'm not a Yankees fan, but I'll certainly miss John Sterling with his excellent calls. I mean, I would listen to Yankee games at times. Pure class, excellent job. But me being an Islanders fan, hockey fan, one of the reasons I became an Islander fan is listening to his calls back in the mid 70s. He was the Islanders radio announcer, and listening to him do those games. I don't know if you're aware, if anybody watching here, is aware, but he would always call the Islander. The Islanders would score, and you'd hear him, Islander goal, Islander goal, and every time they scored. So it was very exciting. And again, a 10-year-old like me getting into hockey and getting into the Islanders, I would listen just to hear him sometimes. And, ever grateful for that. And again, just listening to him do Yankee games, he's certainly going to be missed even by non-Yankee fans like me. And, something I forget to mention with the Mets here before, you were talking about David Wells and the no-hitters with the Yankees. Some guy named Dwight Gooden pitched a no-hitter with the Yankees, I believe, back in the day. I don't think it was 1998, but
it was 1996 when they won the World Series. But yeah, carry on.
No, I knew it was around that time. But touching thing the Mets did, they retired his number over the weekend, which, I think is an excellent idea. And I didn't get to see the ceremony, unfortunately, but I love the fact that they did that. It seems like every Mets fan agrees with that. And, a touch of class, that they were able to retire his number. So, like I said, I'm going to get into some Mets information here. Hopefully, I'm not stealing your thunder.
You are not, Joe. So, anyway, we're gonna turn it over to you now for some Mets news. So, Joe.
Yeah, and this is news that I like to talk about as a Mets fan, and Mets fans like to hear. I said in last week's podcast, as they were starting to play better, and they had this 6-game homestand coming up, that it was imperative really for them to win 4 out of the 6. Again, playing mediocre competition, nothing against the Royals and the Pirates. Both are up and coming teams and playing well. But still, I thought being at home, if the Mets want to show that they're a potential playoff team, then these are the types of series that they had to win. So I was asking for 4 out of 6. I didn't get that. I got 5 out of 6. So they went above and beyond, sweeping the Pirates in this series like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, taking 2 out of 3 against the Royals over the weekend. So they're starting to hit. And I was talking about last week how Brandon Nimmo woke up after getting off to a horrible start. And he had 8 RBIs last year, or last week rather. And actually, Nimmo had 7 RBIs this week. But the polar bear has woken up out of hibernation. He was struggling. I mentioned a 30% strikeout rate for Pete Alonso last week, or that he had up until last week. Well, 3 home runs this week, 4 RBIs, a 1343 OPS. So, and he only had 2 strikeouts all week. So definitely making improvements there, making contact and making the hard hit contact that we know Pete Alonso usually does. So great to see. And no coincidence that a lot of the other pieces of the Mets offense got going. Some other highlights here. Sterling Marte with a couple of home runs. He hit one today, 3 RBIs. A little concerning. He's been striking out a lot. He had 9 strikeouts in the 7 games this week. So if he can get those down, that would be great. But the Mets are showing off a little bit of their depth as well. We were talking about some of the, the guys that maybe don't play every day, like DJ Stewart, Tyrone Taylor. These guys had excellent weeks. I mean, DJ Stewart had a home run, 5 RBIs, a 1235 OPS, 364 batting average during the week. And Tyrone Taylor hit a home run, 7 RBIs. Again, Nimmo had 7 RBIs this week and a 1212 OPS. He also had a 500 batting average this week. So excellent job there. He's hitting 341 on the season. So excellent job with the batting average there. Jeff McNeil had another good week, hitting 304, 5 RBIs. Harrison Bader starting to get comfortable now in the lineup. He had his first home run today, but he had 5 RBIs for the week. He hit 364 through the week as well. So, again, the good thing is the Mets won these home games. They started 1-5 at home. They went 5-1 at home now on this road trip, so they're 500 there. They outscored their opponents 45-22 during this week, so that's basically 6.5-3 if you average it out. So definitely looking up there for a team that couldn't hit a beach ball the first week of the season. Definitely making strides and doing well there. If we look at some of the pitching here, they're getting a combination of both. I mean, these starting pitchers that Mets fans were concerned about, the guys like Severino and Quintana, that you didn't know, if they still had anything left. Are they has-beens? Can they contribute to this team? And both of them struggled in their first start. But I'll tell you what, both of them are, they're pitching, getting some innings in, and they're pitching effectively. Luis Severino had 2 wins this week. He pitched 11 innings, 6 hits, 1 earned run, with a .82 WHIP and a 167 average against. I already mentioned Jose Buto, another 6-inning game, 2 hits, like a .5 WHIP. They hit 105 batting average against them. Jose Quintana got a win. He pitched 10 innings. He did give up 9 hits, 4 earned runs, but still getting some innings in and getting a win. Adrian Hauser had a much better start. He pitched a little over 5 innings, only 2 hits. But it's the bullpen that's really, doing a great job. In fact, they're the number 1 bullpen ERA in the National League. There's 4 other American League teams that have better ERAs, but the Mets are the top bullpen in the National League. Here's some performances. Guys like Reed Garrett, he pitched 3 innings during the week. He got a win. Only gave up 1 hit, .6 WHIP. They hit 091 against him. Who else here? Adam Ottavino, who's always been reliable for them. 3 innings, did not give up a hit or a run. He got a win. He didn't give up a walk either, so his WHIP was 0. Getting some good lefty pitching from Jake Diekman. He pitched almost 3 innings and, again, just gave up 1 hit. .38 WHIP. Drew Smith got a save. Edwin Diaz stopped the presses. Edwin Diaz gave up a run. He gave up a home run. They were up by 2 in the game that he came in, and he gave up a home run to cut the lead to 1, but he still got 2 saves during the week. Otherwise, that was the only hit he gave up, and that's the only run he's given up so far as well. I think I mentioned everybody there that, that pitched well. One little setback, Sean Manaea, who pitched really well in his first couple of games. He got shelled in the game that he pitched. He only pitched 3 2/3 innings, but he gave up like 9 hits, 6 earned runs, 3 walks. So hopefully that's a mirage. Hopefully he gets back to where he was the first couple of games, pitching really effectively. Hopefully nothing's wrong. Again, he's been injury prone, so he has a performance like that. Hopefully it was just a bad performance. And it was the Royals. Maybe they, some of those guys had hit against him from when he was in the American League. I don't know what the explanation was, but he was just totally ineffective. And again, I'm thinking and hoping that's just going to be a 1-game thing and he'll be back to his normal self. So this team is hitting right now. They're pitching. In fact, even timely hitting. Today I was watching the game and they had, I forget, they hadn't, in the first week of the season, they couldn't get runners in with 2 outs or get runners from scoring position. Now there were a few occasions here, a couple of them today, where, there was 2 outs, there was guys in scoring position, and they're getting the singles. It doesn't have to be the big home run. They're getting the single that scores 2 runs, with 2 outs. So they're doing those things right. They're fielding well. They're pitching well. They're starting pitching, relief pitching, the back of the bullpen, the middle of the bullpen. They're playing like a team, and they're playing like a winning team right now. And they're going to be tested. You had mentioned that the series with the Dodgers coming up. But, they did pass a test against the Braves last week. They won 2 out of 3. I was thrilled to death that they won 1 game in that series. and then to end up winning 2, where you score 16 runs in that third game there, that's just incredible. So to win 2 out of 3 in Atlanta is amazing. I'm not going to expect that. I mean, just if they can take 2 out of 3 in Los Angeles, I mean, that would be amazing as well. And they got the Dodgers at a time where some of their stars are not hitting, and they're having some pitching issues and injuries with their starting staff. So they have the Dodgers in a spot, where they could win a couple of games in that series. And then they play in San Francisco after that, and the Giants aren't playing well either. So if they can continue, what they've been doing here, and I'll take a 3-3 road trip on this. If they can get more, that's awesome. I'm certainly, not going to say no. But if they can, and do in this California trip here with a 3-3 record, I think that'll be a great way to continue the momentum that they have. And again, always more fun to talk about them when they're winning. And right now, they're playing like a team that wants to win and believes that they can.
Absolutely. And Joe, for me, it's bittersweet as a Yankee fan. Every time you mention Harrison Bader, Adam Ottavino, and Luis Severino, because I liked those 3 guys with the Yankees. It's just unfortunately they were hampered by injuries and everything. And
Right.
Harrison Bader, they traded last year because they wanted to go in a younger direction. But it's so good to see them do well in the Mets. And I say that as a Yankees fan because they worked their tails off. They're hardworking athletes. They're good guys, and they just they like to win, and they found their spot so far. And like I said, Joe, I told you when I said as a Yankee fan, I gave you my full endorsement of Carlos Mendoza. It looks like that's come true so far. So
yeah, he's not so bad after all.
No, but I knew he was going to be one of the better choices for the Mets, coming from Aaron Boone and coming from his style of managing, being a guy that's going to hold young players accountable and do some Aaron Boone kind of tactics. You know what I mean? Right.
Right.
And he's done that. So, and anyway, Joe, before we move on, we do have one comment that was mentioned at 8:07 earlier in the show, and it's from our friends at the Back It Up Binge podcast. They're the Baltimore Orioles podcast.
Yes.
The guy goes, Yohan Ramirez has been lights out so far for the O's. That's true. And then I also responded back that Jackson Holiday looked good in his debut too for the O's.
I was first of all, thanks for the comment, guys. We always appreciate that. And sorry we didn't get to it sooner. And hey, if Yohan Ramirez can do well for the Orioles, that's awesome. I enjoy seeing the Orioles win. I like young teams like this that, just have such a bright future in front of them. And then to see Holiday come in and finally get his opportunity, and seems like he's doing pretty well so far. Hopefully he keeps it up. And again, that's one of the more fun teams in baseball to watch. And I've already watched a couple of Orioles games, and again, they just keep winning and seem to just have fun doing it. But yeah, if he can, perform for you guys and help you, then all power to him.
Exactly. We here driving to the top production still support former Yankees and Mets players doing well on other teams, except when they play us. But when they're not playing us, we give them their flowers.
Right.
So, anyway, Joe, guess what time it is? It is now that time in our show for our question of the week segment.
Okay, I'm ready now. In the last couple of weeks, I said too much about my bad streak. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut, take the question, and get this one right.
Okay, so do you want to give it a try then?
Yes, definitely.
All right, Joe, here's your question. Can you guess this MLB player? He played on 3 different teams, is on the Hall of Fame ballot. That's a different theme from the other couple of weeks where they wasn't. This one is on the ballot. Was a 1-time MVP and a 1-time World Series champ. Is it Andrew Jones, Jimmy Rollins, Carlos Beltran, or Gary Sheffield? And as John Sterling would call him, the Master Chef.
Yeah. All right. He played for 3 teams. See, now I was going to go with somebody, but then during the Mets game today, they were talking about Gary Sheffield. No, I'm going to go with my first instinct here. I think Andrew Jones was on that 95 Braves team. I think he played for the Orioles and the Braves and maybe somebody else. You said he was an MVP?
Yeah, one-time MVP. Yep.
Let's go Andrew Jones.
Nope, the correct answer it's gonna be surprising was Jimmy Rollins.
Jimmy Rollins. I guess I didn't know he was on the Hall of Fame ballot this time around.
Yeah, well, guess what? I told you it's not done by the writers anymore. It's done by the players committee now. So that's why.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he should be on there. I was always a big Jimmy Rollins fan, and he was a big part of that 2008 Phillies World Series team.
Yeah.
Didn't know he played for 3 teams though. I thought maybe the Phillies and somebody else, once he was done. But excellent question as always. Just the answer was not so excellent. But my batting average is still 0, so I got time. Just like the Mets, I'm off to a very, very slow start, but I'm going to get my momentum going, and I'm going to get some of these questions right.
And guess what? The 2 teams you mentioned, here's a little fun fact. You mentioned the Braves won the World Series in 1995, and the Phillies won the World Series in 2008.
Yeah.
And they were obviously, both of those teams went back to the World Series the following year.
Yes.
Guess which team beat those 2 teams when they were the defending champs, the Yankees.
That's right. That's right. That's a good point. I wouldn't have thought about that, but totally right.
Because they beat the Braves in 96 when they went back-to-back, trying to go back-to-back, and then they beat the Phillies when they were trying to go back-to-back in 09.
Yeah, were their Yankees down 0-2 in that 96 series?
Yes, they were.
I thought so. They lost the first 2 home games, and then they won everything after that.
Mm-hmm. And same thing with the Phillies series. They lost the first game because Cliff Lee pitched like unbelievable, and then they won it 4-2 after that.
Okay, yeah.
And that was the first year at the stadium that they're at now.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. And that was also the first year at Citi Field for the Mets as well.
Yep.
So anyway, as Stephen A. Smith would say, I digress. Let's moving on.
Yeah.
Joe Girardi, who was the manager of that Yankees team who won the World Series, as I mentioned, and managed the Phillies, talks MLB rule changes. And we have to talk about the different rule changes in the MLB before. And I read an interesting article on ex-Yankees manager Joe Girardi on the changes, and I'd like to share some of my takes with you, Joe, and our wonderful audience here that caught my eye on adding the pitch clock. And he quoted, "From a player's standpoint, it's probably like playing 20 less games from a time schedule, and that's substantial when you're playing 162 games a year. You're playing 30 or so in spring training," Girardi said. "You're reducing your time on your feet, and it's less wear and tear on your body. It might lengthen your career or help you be more successful in the months of August and September when you're really, really tired and you've been through a rough season." And so, yeah, basically it feels like any other sport now where you're playing with a clock. Games are going at normal to fast speed, and you're not playing 162. You're playing more like 82 in the NBA or in the NHL. Girardi does make a good point here when stating it's probably like playing 20 less games, and it may help you be more successful in August, September when you're really tired. I already said what I thought, but Joe, what do you think of his point? Does he make sense here?
I agree with that 1,000%. Yeah, I've always been a big fan of the pitch clock. I've shared that here before. And when did he say that? Because I don't, did he say that when they first made the change, or did he say that recently? Does it say?
Recently, on when they added it last year about being in its full second year this year.
Yeah, because I heard other people say that, I thought, last year. And the fact that it does, that the fact that you're spending less time at the ballpark, you got more time, you can get out earlier, and I think it's less wear and tear. I completely agree with that. And, even just mentally, because you might be an outfielder not getting any plays out in the outfield, but you're still there and being there for 3.5 hours and having to keep your focus on the game. And it's dragging on because there's been 100 pitching changes and stuff. And, again, these guys are taking forever in the batting box and batter's box and on the mound. That it's a little more mentally taxing, I would think, than people think. So to not have that and to be able to just get the game going and be done a half hour earlier, I think that is not only physically for players, but I think mentally makes a difference too. So I'm going to say something a negative about the pitch clock in a second. I don't know if you have it on your sheet there, but if not, I'll bring it up. But I think it's definitely easier on the players, and I think Girardi makes total sense with what he's saying there, and I completely agree with it.
Mm-hmm. And here's actually what he said about the pitcher's injuries.
Yes, that's where I was going.
And so I know you were going with that, but here's what he actually said about this. And I quote, all these injuries were happening before the clock at an alarming rate for me. And he said, I think it's partly because of the size of the players. And obviously they're more athletic now, the max effort that they're using, all the training they're doing, trying to increase everything from flexibility and their strength. And guess what? Their arm, I don't know if you know this, but their arm in any baseball player, our arms are actually meant to throw underhand, not bending your wrist,
right,
throwing it overhand. Where like in softball or like bowling, when you go underhand like that too. So why do you think in cricket they bowl like that the same way? So with a straight arm. So anyway, it's not meant to go overhand. That's not how our body was designed. And when you start putting the torque and the strength into it, sometimes to me the body just can't handle it. It's why you see all the injuries. And also, Joe, what you notice now with the pitch clock, you're starting to see more softball kind of like pitches, but they're still throwing hard baseball pitches. Like, how you don't see a lot of guys just wind up and kick with one hand and throw overhand. You're starting to see like people like Carlos Rodon or Clark Schmidt or Nestor Cortez kick their feet like it's softball and then throwing it like a baseball pitch to get more movement on it. So, Joe, I know you said you're going to disagree on that part, but why?
Well, no, I think people were saying or suggesting that the pitch clock was causing a rash of these injuries. Now, I'm going to admit, I thought about it for a second, like, shoot, I hope that's not the case. But then I thought about it and I heard other arguments of people saying, no, this has been happening and this has been the trend for years. So the more I think about it and the more I see, I think he's right. Actually, I don't disagree. I agree with the fact that I don't think the pitch clock is causing these injuries. This has been happening for a long time now. And it's because, to me, I mean, these pitchers, if they think a pitcher has major league potential, they're babying them so much. I mean, they throw 10 pitches in a high school baseball game, and it's like, oh my God, he's thrown 10 pitches, get him out. They're not conditioned. I mean, past pitchers were conditioned to throw 9 innings or at least 7 or 8. And these guys are throwing, I'm exaggerating, they're throwing 10 pitches and you got to get them out. Don't throw anymore. And then when they're forced to throw, then their arm can't handle it and they're not ready for it and they get hurt. So I really think that, it's the development with these pitchers that's causing all these issues in Major League Baseball. And again, it scared me. And it's like, shoot, I really think I got to think about this. Is the pitch clock really making this much of a difference? But then, sense took over and I really believe that it's not, maybe a very, very, very small percentage. But I agree with what, Girardi said, that this has been happening for a long time. And I don't think it's the cause of this many injuries. And especially it's always more noticeable when some of the bigger names, Shane Bieber and people like that are going out, that, people notice it a little bit more. But yeah, I think if the pitch clock is responsible, it's a very, minor percentage, which it may not even be that. It's just these pitchers aren't developed to throw that many innings anymore. And besides the fact that, like you said, they're big, their bodies are bigger, their arms are stronger, there's more muscle, and they're throwing it harder. So just all those combination of factors, I think, is what's causing these rash of injuries. The pitch clock has very little, if anything, to do with it.
Now, I'd like to talk about some of the top 5 pitchers of all time, if you don't mind, Joe, in no particular order. So let's start out with David Cone for the New York Yankees. He signed a 3-year, $19.3 million or 19.5 million dollar contract before the 1996 season. So the Yankees re-signed Cone when he became a free agent after the 1995 season. Even with an aneurysm in his right shoulder in 96, he came back for September and got the ball from Joe Torre against the Braves in Game 3 of the World Series in Atlanta when the Yankees were down 2-0, like you mentioned. And then in 98, he went 20-7 for the greatest Yankees team of them all. And then, oh, by the way, he pitched a perfect game in 99.
Mm-hmm.
After David Wells. Next, we have John Lester of the Chicago Cubbies.
Mm-hmm.
He signed a 6-year, $155 million contract before the 2015 season. It wasn't merely that Lester went 77-44 with a 3.84 ERA over 6 years for the Cubbies. He started and was the winning pitcher for the Cubbies in Game 5 of the 2016 World Series, when they were down 3-1 against Cleveland and on the verge of losing a chance to win the franchise's first series in 108 years. Lester pitched 6 innings that night, giving up 4 hits and 2 earned runs while striking out 5. We already knew how tough Lester was as a cancer survivor, and he was never tougher as a pitcher than he was that night at Wrigley.
Yeah. Yeah, he win with the Red Sox too?
Yes, he did in 2007 and 13.
13. So he took that winning pedigree to Chicago, and he was a proven winner, going there. And you talked about David Cone too. I mean, Cone is one of my favorite pitchers. Pitched for the Mets. I thought he was going to throw their first no-hitter. I remember it was like Father's Day 1987, I think, his first year with the Mets, or he came to the Mets in 87. I don't know if it was that year or the next one, where he had a no-hitter going late. I think it was Father's Day, and then he gave up a hit, and he didn't get the no-hitter, obviously. But pitched several great years with the Mets before resurrecting his career with the Yankees there and winning a World Series, pitching the perfect game. And again, I hated to see it happen with the Yankees instead of the Mets, but as being on the Mets before, certainly felt happy with him for him, and still one of my favorite pitchers there.
Mm-hmm. And now we're moving on to the Rocket, Roger Clemens with the Blue Jays, when he signed and another former Yankee as well, 2 separate stints, and signed a 4-year, $40 million contract before the 1997 season. Another member of the 300 win club on this list, and someone else who was a free agent more than once. Roger didn't last long in Toronto after leaving the Red Sox, but you have to say the Jays got their money's worth while he was there. 41-13, 2 straight Cy Young awards. So, Joe, what do you think of the Rocket there? Any thoughts on him?
Yeah, certainly a competitor. I enjoyed him more early in his career, because then there was some controversial things, later in his career, and, blow-ups on the mound in playoff games and things like that. And, he was always, it seems like, pitching. I remember him pitching against the Mets in the 86 World Series. And so he was, of course, the enemy there. But, I respect him. But just, again, there's questions, about conduct and, performance enhancing things that there's always questions about. So a little respect lost there, but in another way, you can't really take away what he's done. Just a great pitcher and a great competitor.
Very good competitor. And had some wicked pitches, like his fastball was good and everything.
Yeah,
That's why they called him the Rocket, because his fastball at the time was really,
early in his career. I don't know if it was 86. I think it was 86. He had like a 20 strikeout game.
Mhm.
I wonder how many pitches he threw in that game. Again, no
Mm.
pitch count back then. He probably threw 140 pitches in that game, and nobody said a
Mhm.
word about that. But they remember certainly that he had 20 strikeouts.
Mhm. Anyway, let's move on to another former Yankee, another southpaw here, CC Sabathia. He signed a 7-year, $161 million contract before the 2009 season, and the Yankees fans got their money's worth with him though.
Mhm.
CC got to New York in 2009 and immediately helped the Yankees win what is still their only World Series they've won since 2000. He compiled a 134-88 record as a Yankee. Even in 2007, when he clearly wasn't what he had been when he was young, he had a 14-5 record, and manager Joe Girardi gave him the ball in Game 7 of the American League Championship Series against the Houston Astros.
Mhm.
Any thoughts on him, Joe?
Yeah, I always liked CC. I mean, he was one of those guys that if he was, whether he had his stuff or he didn't, there was so many times where it seemed like the guy just didn't have it that day, but yet he still pitched 6, 7 innings. He still kept his team in the game. He still ate up innings, so the bullpen, wasn't messed up for days after that. He was again another great competitor. He's got that championship under his belt there. But again, I just love the fact that that guy never quit, especially like I said, days where he didn't have it, and you think, oh, good, they're going to smack him around, and they're going to beat the Yankees here, whoever they're playing. No, he would stay in again and just figure it out. And again, even if he didn't like shut him down, he was still eating up innings and finding a way to at least keep the Yankees in the game. So again, great competitor, and I have a lot of respect for CC.
Me too. And then what about Max? Yes, I'm Scherzer for the Nationals. This was a huge contract he got here. And this was pre when they went to the Red Wings as their farm team. 7-year, $210 million contract before the 2015 season. Max was another pitcher who proved that you can spend big on a free agent starter after his 30th birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Luxury tax.
Yeah.
Scherzer left the Tigers, with whom he won the 2013, bless you again, AL Cy Young Award, and was even better in Washington. He would win 2 more Cy Young Awards for the Nationals before they traded him to the Dodgers, and he was a starter in Game 7 of the only World Series the Nats have ever won. So your thoughts on Scherzer?
I'm a big Max Scherzer fan. I always have been, even when he was with the Tigers. Again, you want to talk about a guy that competes. I mean, this guy was brutal, and he was the ultimate competitor. Now, again, he was a champion, getting the Nationals to the World Series and winning it there. I have no bitter taste. I mean, he was, with the Mets for a year and a half, and the Mets didn't get the best Max Scherzer there performance-wise. But he was a great locker room guy. He was a great dugout guy. So he made contributions in ways that a lot of people didn't see with the Mets. Again, maybe not his best pitching performances. And, it ended, on a bad note with him being, shipped out. But, he made some positive contributions there. And, again, I don't have a bad taste in my mouth about that. But I always loved watching him wherever he was. Unless it was against the Mets, then of course you didn't want to see him. But there was a couple of years where he was just almost unhittable, and nothing could stop him. But great competitor. He'll be a Hall of Famer, I think, and hopefully he can come back soon and do some things for the Rangers there.
Yeah, and but that was the one thing about him. He ended up being a good trade bait, and you got some young prospects for him back. And same thing with Justin Verlander. I mean, he obviously didn't. He still contributed in ways that you didn't see with the Mets, but look at you got he was good trade bait there too, and you got younger players for him. That's why I
I
feel like GMs sign these players too, because you let them sometimes overstay their welcome, and if you
mhm.
can, um, try to trade them for something in return, and you got to give the Mets credit for at least doing that and not letting them walk away for nothing. You know.
I didn't even think about that. And that's totally right. That's a good point. I might not see these players yet, but that's a very good point. Some of the rewards that from those guys will be reaped perhaps in a couple of seasons from now.
Right. And then now we're going to end with probably the greatest pitcher of all time, probably at least the 1980s, okay? During Bon Jovi, Journey, Don't Stop Believing, Living on a Prayer. This guy was doing all of that. He also had the eye of the tiger. And when it came to the final countdown, he struck everybody out. All my 80s references for Nolan Ryan right there. Anywho, um, he signed a 4-year, $4.5 million contract before the 1980 season. Now, I don't know if that was still during the luxury tax, but that was a pretty good living back then. I mean,
Yes.
1980 and for him, especially for what his career turned out to be too. You could say they underpaid him back then too, but still. But Ryan signed with the Astros in 1980s after leaving the Angels. Across the 1980s, he continued to strike out the world. Broke Walter Johnson's all-time record for strikeouts and helped pitch the Astros into the postseason for the first 2 times in the team's history. He also threw the fifth of a record 7 career no-hitters. In his final season with Houston, 1988, the age of 41, he pitched 212 innings and struck out 228 batters. So, Joe, what do you think of Nolan Ryan himself, and what do you think about all these pitchers I mentioned?
Well, Nolan Ryan is my favorite pitcher of all time. Just there's such a mystique about him. Now, I was too young to remember when he pitched for the Mets. You know, people don't realize his one World Series that he won was with the '69 Mets. He was a part of that team, and he made some contributions. He started sometimes. He was, middle relief at times. But can you imagine having to bat against this guy in the early '70s? People weren't throwing 100 miles an hour back then. And he was close, and he might have even hit it a couple of times. But the problem with him, not only was he throwing at 100 miles an hour, he had no idea where the ball was going. So you're a batter. I think part of the reason he got all these strikeouts is because if you're a batter up there, you're probably scared for your life. This guy's throwing 100 miles an hour, which is unheard of at the time, and God only knows where the ball's going to go. You know, he was striking out people, but he was walking just as many. And I'd be petrified if I was a major leaguer going up against this guy. No matter when he pitched, he had the potential to pitch a no-hitter. I only saw one of his no-hitters, I think. Again, he was with the Angels in the early '70s, and he pitched a few of those, and I was a little bit too young to catch any of those. But I did see he pitched a no-hitter with the Astros. I think it was his 4th one or his 5th one in 1981. And I watched that game live. It was on national TV, and he pitched the no-hitter in that game, and I got to see it. But there was just such a mystique against this guy that even going against him when the Mets played them in 1986 in that amazing classic league championship series, the series was tied 2-2. And they were playing the 5th game at Shea Stadium, and they were going back to Houston after that. And, the Mets had won 108 games that year, and they were the heavy favorite to win the World Series, but the Astros were giving them everything that they could. And this pivotal 5th game with the series tied 2-2, and again, the Mets' last game at Shea for the series, Ryan had a no-hitter going halfway through that game, and he was pitching like he was going to throw one. And it's like, oh, my goodness, of all the times this guy's got to get hot and throw a no-hitter, it's got to be now. And Strawberry hit a home run against him in like the 5th or the 6th inning, which was their first hit that tied the game. And eventually the game went, extra innings, and the Mets won it. And, of course, won that series and the World Series. But every single time he took the mound, there was a chance he could throw a no-hitter that night. And just again, I was always infatuated with that guy. I was always just I enjoyed watching him. And again, he eventually learned, a little more control, and the walks went way down, and he wasn't as wild as he was in the beginning. But always, whenever I could, in fact, I saw him pitch live in Houston one time. We took a family trip with some friends in Houston. We watched the game in the Astrodome, 1982. We actually got to see Nolan Ryan pitch that game live, which was amazing. So just everything about him, the fact that he started with the Mets. It's one of the worst trades in the history of Major League Baseball when they got rid of him. I mean, the Mets gave up on him, and they just couldn't take the fact that he couldn't get his control going, and they never saw the fact that he was going to be one of the best pitchers in baseball ever. And they missed that one for a washed up third baseman that never really did anything with them. So, they'll never live that one down. Everything about Nolan Ryan just, is crazy. Even when pitchers charge the mound and he kicks the guy's butt, and just, he could fight too. So everything about him just, I love. And I watched the 30 for 30 special that they had on, which I think was extremely well done. I learned a bunch of things that I had never known about that. The guy, the fact that he pitched till like he was 85 years old too, just amazing. And he was still throwing no hitters in his 40s, and just everything about him. So number one on my list, and these guys that you mentioned, they're all great pitchers. Now, some of them, Ryan, I would put top 5 of all time. Guys like Cone and that, I wouldn't put them top 5 of all time, CC Sabathia, but maybe, in the last 25, 30 years, perhaps. But still, there's not a bad name on that list. They're all great pitchers. They're all class. Well, maybe not Clemens, but even Clemens got to be, one of the top pitchers of the last 40 years too. So, all those guys, top notch, and there's not a bad name on that list for sure.
I agree. Well, it looks like we've come to the end of our show. So, Joe, where can we find you in the social media world on April 17, 2024?
April 17th already. 2024 is a third over already, almost crazy. But anyway, you can find me on Joe Dell Sports on Twitter X. Just putting my 2 cents worth about different sports on there.
Thank you very much, Joe. And then you can find me, yours truly, at Bill's Chat 1 at Bill's Mafia Chat, and at Jamie Malloy, the unbiased journalist at DJ Dog Tags on X, and theforkball.com, where I write about all sports. And please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Driving to the Top Productions, and always listen in every Wednesday at 8 o'clock p.m., wherever you can listen to your podcast. Thank you very much for listening, folks. And your attention, please, ladies and gentlemen. You've been listening to the Subway Conversation Chat with Jamie and Joe. See you next week, folks.
Have a great week, everybody.